All right, Mike here with That's Good Enough For Me.com. We're doing our Who's Zoomin' Who series. I'm joined with Mike Henneberger, author of Rock Bottom at the Renaissance. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. We've been chatting about your book since you sent it to me in the mail, and it sat down next to me in this pile of things that I promised people I'm going to listen to or review.
I had that same promise with a lot of friends who've put out books over the last year, and just haven't been able to get to most of them either. So I get it.
And that's what this celebration is about. I'm fast tracking this episode so we can talk about the Tyler Posey audiobook version of this that you're putting out. When is the date?
It drops April 27th on Audible, and it's available for pre-order already. So whenever you hear this, it'll be ready. Perfect.
Well, yeah, let's talk about the book. Let's kind of start at the beginning. You said something right at the beginning as I was listening today that I really, really identified with as a punk rock dad. My daughter turned 4. You said, songwriters' songs are never that good when they're happy, when their lives are perfect. And it was something that really touched me in a good place. And something I've recognized about my heroes. Eventually you get to a place where you have everything you've ever wanted. I mean, look behind me. How are you supposed to channel, especially in pop punk, emo, punk rock music, that kind of energy?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. In fact, I'm, and maybe you're dealing with this too, but like I am pretty happy right now, and that's a problem. I mean, I've been married for 5.5 years. We got a kid on the way in June, and I've never been more excited about anything. And I'm not like scared that the kid is going to make me less productive with my creative endeavors, because I've already been so unproductive in creative endeavors for the last 5 years, because I just like hanging out with my wife, and I still have a day job, and so I go to work, and I on the side I do freelance video production stuff. And so I work, and I, make money, and I hang out with my wife, and it's great. And I have, it's hard for me to get as motivated to go torture my brain to write something again, that I find meaningful. So yeah, I don't know how people do it. And I don't think I've experienced, I mean, this is bad, because we only know about music. We don't know what state of mind screenwriters are in when they make movies that we like, so it might be unfair to say that. Maybe just about, and we know a little bit more about authors and stuff, but yeah, I mean, who knows what, I love movies, probably movies and TV above any other medium, well, I mean, not above music, but most art, I love movies and TV, but how do we know what those people are dealing with? Actors are artists too, and we don't know what their state of mind is.
I read once about Sylvester Stallone, his regimen when he was writing the original Rocky movie.
Yeah,
where I think he stayed up for 6 days straight and wrote the entire thing in one stop.
Yeah, I think I heard that too. He wrote it really fast.
And yeah, so that was something that I thought about, and I think about as I like that you refuse to call yourself a musician in the book. Yeah. I identified with that too. It's
come on, man! You play everything though, don't you?
But it's weird, there's always somebody that's going to be way better than you at anything that you like to do.
Well, sure, but at least you can do it. I can barely play guitar.
I'm more identified with it, because I think that if you're a chill, cool person, and you start a job at a new company, they find out about your band way later. It's not you're leading. It's not you're hey, I'm Mike, I'm in a band. It's nice to meet you. It's important to me. It is such a big chunk of my life that I don't really want to just hand out to someone as a flex or a brag.
Sure. Well, and I'm sure it's rooted in the same thing as me, where it's I mentioned in the book that I don't call myself a musician because of the respect I have for musicians. And as a music journalist too, we have that respect for music, and I mean, I played in bands for 7 years, but I was just a vocalist, and I've played guitar for, 20 years and I can play a little bit, but I've just never been confident enough, and I'm not good enough to like start a band as a guitarist, you know. But I'm trying. Like COVID, I subscribed to that Fender guitar lesson thing, and
oh, cool.
I'm trying to get better at it. But because of the kid, I want to teach my kid these things, and I'm not good enough to do it. So, but I want.
And if we're talking like just general motivation for being a father, and then we're going back to finding those really crazy parts of your brain that you require access to write, I will tell you that, like, I mean, the day I found out that I was having a half Vietnamese little girl, the day we found out the gender of the baby was the day that grab him by the pussy fucking thing leaked. So I will tell you, there might be a part of your journey coming very soon where as a dad, you're just going to develop the ability to weep like whenever you feel like it.
I mean, I already cry a lot. I'm not in control of like when I feel like it. But I cry at like my wife she's from Long Island and she's way tougher than me. But she makes fun of me all the time because I'm like happy right now because she's pregnant and she gets those pregnant cries where she just like cries for nothing. And so now I get to make fun of her. But any other time, like she's always busting my balls.
So, and we talk, you know, socially, we talk about stupid alpha male and just men in general having a difficult time opening up to their buddies about their feelings and stuff like that. And it's been a much bigger discussion over the last year, people checking in on their friends, you know, just looking at everybody's mental health. And it's kind of positive. It's a positive thing to come out of a shitty couple of years. But for me personally, it was always like, wow, the end of 17 again almost made me cry for some weird reason.
Yeah, man, that movie Click, Adam Sandler movie.
For sure.
That makes me cry. Dad movies make me cry. And I talk about it a little bit in the book, how like my dad wasn't really around when I was growing up. Now we have a great relationship, but yeah, like Jersey Girl, the Kevin Smith movie with Ben Affleck. There's some cry moments in that for me. Yeah. Click makes me cry. Everything makes me cry, man.
So I always like collected those moments. Like when the little girl on America's Best Dance Crew points to the sky for her to smile. I'm watching with my wife and I'm like, I'm going to slip down into the basement in the dead of night and just sob about this later.
Oh yeah, no, I can't control it.
Well, it's just going to get worse then. So
yeah, I bet.
And there's a lot of shitty things about planet Earth that haven't really bothered me that bother me now.
Yeah.
So I would prepare for that. Along with another thing I really identified in the book, you spoke to like every single person that was born in the 80s, I think, by saying that you think in song lyrics and you're able to take lyrics that you like to songs and craft them around your own feelings and situations that you're living through.
Yeah.
I'd like you to elaborate on that a little bit. Let's throw a Bayside song into your discussion, because I know that that's one of the bands representative in your book.
Yeah. So for those who haven't seen or read the book, every chapter in the book has a song that goes with it. And it's not like an essay about the song, but the song appears like a soundtrack to the chapter. And so if you're reading the physical book, you'll see lyrics pop up in between paragraphs, like you'd hear a song in a movie pop up. And so the first song in the book is in chapter 1 is 23 by Jimmy Eat World. Because that song was like playing in my headphones as that moment was happening. And then, there's 3 Bayside songs in the book, 3 Bayside chapters. If you count Megan, the Smoking Popes chapter, that's, 4 Bayside songs. Bayside's a band I've loved since before they had a full album. Like I started listening to them. I booked them in my small town in Texas back in like 2002 or 3. And so, I don't know what it is. I think, and what I attribute it to in the book is like my dad would play records all the time when I was a kid. And when my parents were divorced, he lived like 14 hours away. So we wouldn't see him that often, but in the summer we'd go like for 2 weeks or to stay with him. And every morning he was a Navy guy for 20 plus years. So he was up at 5 a.m. and he'd put records on and drink coffee. And I just remember him doing that. And I remember him having like the nicest like stereo equipment you could have in, the 80s and 90s, and these giant big boxes of 5 different components. And yeah, he always took care of his records, and he played everything. I mean, from The Cure to Johnny Cash to Patsy Cline to Wham, to Bruce Springsteen. Yeah, I mean, he just had a very eclectic taste. And yeah, I didn't put it together back then, but as I for some reason, I think that's what it was, because I can't attribute it to anything else. Like, neither of my parents were like, you need to listen to music or listen to this song. And then like my parents got divorced when I was like 8. And so I would just hang out with friends, and music was just always around. I was a skater kid, and there was always punk rock playing, and there was always like ska playing. And so that stuff was just always around. And I think I just associate it with, getting me through a hard time in my life. And so, yeah, I mean, music just became a important thing to me. And I started my first band when I was 14. And yeah, I learned to express myself through that band. And so immediately, like, that meant music was the best way to express yourself. And like we were talking about earlier, I just never became good at playing any instruments. So once my bands broke up and I didn't get in another one, I became a music journalist, and I just started interviewing bands and writing about music, because it was still a way for me to like express myself. And so, yeah, something in my life made me find that, that thing that just got me through life in music. And so my life was so saturated with it that now every time I go anywhere and, or do anything, there's a song that like I can link that to or reference, or like that happened in a song, yeah. So there's a chapter. The second chapter is Tortures of the Damned by Bayside, which is, I still struggle with like having it so early in the book, because I feel like if anything's going to make someone stop reading, it's going to be that chapter, which is the Chelsea Hotel chapter, which is what I refer to it as now. But it's the chapter when I sleep with a prostitute. And it's a very dark chapter. And then I guess the next one is like a suicide note. So it's pretty dark up front, but if you can make it through there, it gets not better, but less dark. But yeah, so that song Tortures of the Damned is just perfect for that moment in my life that I was dealing with, because it just felt like the darkest moment of my life. And when I was writing the book, it was this time where I was dealing with my major depressive disorder and anxiety disorder at the worst, and was not treating it in healthy ways like I do now. And back then, and even still now, Bayside and The Dangerous Summer, there's 3 songs by The Dangerous Summer in the book too, were the 2 bands that really got me through a lot back then. And so you see them pop up in the book a lot because of that, because the present day in the book takes place in this hotel where I'm so depressed. And in those times in my life back then, and still today, I listened to Bayside and The Dangerous Summer. So those songs were playing as I was writing this book, so that's why they pop up so much in the book.
Great. Well, this is bleak. We should shift gears and talk about your ska band, your Christian ska band, Glue.
Yeah. Let me drink some beer first.
Cheers.
Cheers. Little behind the scenes here. If I can get I can't get my computer around. We're also like moving apartments. So I left my posters up in case I was going to do a podcast before I moved this weekend. So like everything's in boxes except this like back wall. But I have like 3 beers here, but I was like, just get the same beer. So it looks like you're just drinking the same beer.
Yeah. I do the White Claw color challenge where like it took my 2 subscribers like 4 episodes to realize like when he reaches over, it's a different color.
Nice. So I had very little left of one before we started. And so I opened one in the kitchen and like chugged some, but then I was like, oh, well, now I'm going to finish that one. So you might as well bring a third one. So
Yeah.
it's all the same. It's all just one beer.
You're a natural who Zoomin, who guessed.
Oh yeah. Wait, so what were we talking about?
Let's just touch quickly on your ska band, your screamo band. I want to hear about that.
Yeah, so when I was 14, I started a Christian ska band called Glue. It was actually initially called Attack of the Giant Babies because it made for really cool flyers. Because we're talking about 1997 here, where we would cut out pictures of babies from catalogs and cut out pictures of skylines from magazines and then make the baby like walking over the skylines. And that would be our like ska band flyer. So we made our name based on the flyer potential. But then we changed it to Glue. And look, I'm 14. All right. And I didn't come up with this, but our bass player was like signing a picture for somebody. Cause I don't know if you came across this, but back then in the late 90s, this happened in Texas at least, bands would sell like 8x10 black and white promo photos. I don't know if did that happen everywhere?
Yeah.
And it's like me and a lot of friends from that scene are in a Facebook group chat, and we talk about how stupid a lot of that stuff was back then. But he signed GLU for God Loves You.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we were always Glue when we changed our name. So when I was 14, I started that band. When I was 17, I booked our first national tour, just because I wanted to get out of my small town. And I thought the only way to do that was become a pro skater, which I was never going to do because I suck at that too, or start a band. And like, that was the easiest thing to do. I mean, it's not easy at all, but for me, I just found friends who played instruments. And I mean, I had friends, and my brother had never played drums. He played drums for us first. Our bass player had never played bass. Our trumpet player was in marching band. Our trombone players were in marching band. The first tour I booked was 2.5 months long, and we went across the country, or across the west side of the country, for 2.5 months. Because obviously I didn't know what I was doing. You don't book a 2.5 month tour for your first tour, in a 1970 school bus in 1997, that broke down twice a week. But it taught me everything I know now about hustling and about, self-promotion and DIY and, being able to find validation and like being able to be satisfied by doing what you love instead of like making money, I guess.
Oh, for sure. And there was always this, for my like sketchy tours that I used to do as well, there was this feeling when you got home and all your friends were like, how was it, dude? And you were like, oh, the shows were great, man. And it's like everybody in your band knew. Like,
oh, yeah.
We actually played in front of nobody like most of the time.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the good things about, and it's like widely known now. This wasn't our motive back then because we were kids and we were like Christians and we went to church and stuff. And, we listened to a lot of like, that was the heyday of like Tooth and Nail Records, like MXPX coming up and just Christian punk and Christian rock and ska just being huge. It was huge then. We just loved it, and we didn't know any better. I mean, that's what we wanted to do, but yeah, even now, like I've gone out on tours with bands. Like I went out on the road with Have Mercy, on Hopeless Records. And I went out on the road in 2015 with Rocky Vodolato, who's this like singer-songwriter guy who's great. And, had a big day in like the early 2000s when like Dashboard and Bright Eyes were coming up, but also with Dave Hawes on that tour. And like, even on those tours, man, they played to rooms that weren't that crowded. And, you know, I guess they had hotels, but like going on the road with Have Mercy, like we still stayed at like fans' houses, you know?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I love being on the road, but you know, I'm 38 now and it's not the same. I can't sleep on floors anymore, unfortunately. I could, but I'd be really like bummed about it when I got home, you know?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, even just sitting in a car hurts for me now. But
Yeah.
I do, back to the glue thing. So I'm like, I was raised atheist. I'm a fan of Five Iron Frenzy. I think that they're super talented, right?
Yeah.
And there was some times that one of my old punk bands got into those Texas megachurch Christian band circuits when we were on tour. And if you got in with those people, you had killer shows. You're going to make a lot of money.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we never got there making a lot of money, but that's what I was getting at earlier is that like one of the good things about touring as a Christian band then was that like we had a lot of days off because I didn't know what I was doing booking a tour. But we were like, we played in like Salt Lake City once, and this youth pastor brought his youth group from another church. So there's like probably 100 kids there, you know, because one, it's Salt Lake City and they don't get a lot of like Christian bands there because it's super Mormon. But this youth pastor was like, hey, if you guys are passing through here again, or like we were going to like Northern Arizona, he's like, will you come up to my church and play if you have days off? And I'll pay you $500 or I'll pay you $800, you know? And so we had days off. So we went. That happened twice. Like we played Salt Lake City like 3 times in that 2.5 months because we were like the routing was like Arizona and like California. Like we were always around the area where we could fit it in. And the same thing happened in Colorado too. Like we would just play somewhere and another youth pastor would be like, hey, if you guys are passing back through, can you play at my church? And so that was cool because it was just the time for it, you know? So we didn't have a lot of like nobody shows because it was kind of the time for it. So.
That's good. So for us, when we kind of snuck onto that circuit, there was this Christian screamo band in like Fort Worth, and they were kind of shitty guys. Like they like said really offensive things backstage, but they liked my band. And so they were like, hey, like, just don't talk about your faith. You know, like we're loading in and a bunch of girls like ran up to me and my bass player and they're like, you guys are Christians, right? And I looked at my bass player, who's atheist as bones too. And he was just like, absolutely. And then, so like we played our normal set. Our van died forever during that tour. And like, I'm not a person of faith, but I think that it's because we made a lot of money that night. Like we played, you know, it was like this weird 3,000 seat mega church thing. And we made a ton of money. And then our van died forever in Wyoming, like 3 weeks later. And I still think it's because we took advantage of that. And
I was going to say, because that was God punishing you for taking Christian money.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that because it's almost the exact same reason why I still believe it's because like, and I'm not, you know, and I say this in the book too, that like, and I talk a little bit about my like falling out with that world, and how just a lot of people let me down. And because I believed that God was in control of everything, I felt like that was him letting me down. So I like distanced myself from it, but I could not stop believing in it if I wanted to, because of all the like crazy coincidences that happened, that I'm either the luckiest person alive or that's real, you know? And so like, that's just, you know, how I feel about, you know, my experience. And I think that's what it has to be based on. That's why like any Christian that I like and myself believe that you shouldn't push it on people, because what really matters is people's experience with it. And that's what's going to make somebody like if you grew up in church because your parents made you go, you're most likely not super into it anymore. But if somebody has an experience that is personal and that they feel like, you know, is unique to them, then I think that that holds a little stronger than. So it's kind of like your van breaking down and like our bus breaking down in Colorado, but the guy who booked us just happened to know how to rebuild carburetors, and the band that played with us while we had the day off the next day, they had a show like 3 hours away and took us to play that show in their bus. And then brought us back to our bus when it was fixed the next day. That's just like one thing. There's like a million things that happened on tour that, are just two crazy coincidences for me.
It definitely. So I grew up like as soon as I moved from Texas to Nebraska, the small town I lived in, they were like, "What church do you belong to? What church do you belong to?" There's 7 on this block. And we like tried it out for a minute. And I think my brother and I were like, "Hey, we kind of want to play Super Nintendo on Sundays." And so my parents were like, "Okay." But then the church like came with pitchforks to our house. And that's when I was just like, all right, fuck you guys. And like, honestly, evaluating the last year of my life and having discussions with people that have different beliefs, I'm finally able to take the veil down that like sneery, shitty, like punk rock kid that, wants to fight the system, or I'm able to be like, no, that's great that you believe in the things that you believe in. So I'm holding no judgment here.
Oh yeah, no. And I mean, I don't even know what I'm going to do. Like with the kid on the, like I haven't been to church in 20 years, maybe, I don't know, 15 years at least. And so I'm not even like expecting to like, I asked my wife, because my wife is Catholic, or like, I mean, her family's like Irish Catholic, but she hasn't been to church probably longer than me. But I was like, are we going to baptize our kid? Like, I don't care, but Catholics, no matter what, whether they've been to church in their life, will baptize their kids. I grew up Catholic, but my mom's Mexican, so we would go to Catholic church. But yeah, so I don't know. We might do that stuff, but it's the whole church side of it isn't important to me anymore. Like I said, it's I think to each their own on that stuff.
My daughter did baptize me with
yeah.
Like Pedialyte projectile puke.
Oh, nice.
That was fun.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say one and done. Futures is definitely the best Jimmy Eat World record. So I was happy you said that in your book.
I didn't know that was really the consensus, but it seems to be. I'm in a Jimmy Eat World fan group on Facebook, and seems to be the consensus that's the best album. I didn't know that.
Enough time has passed, I think. I mean, we're the same age. I'm absolutely calling my friends that do the High School Never Ends podcast to reach out to you. And
I already did it.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So the same thing. I identify with those guys the same way that you would. We realized Take Your Pants Off and Jacket is the best Blink record. It absolutely is. If you look back at it as like a grown adult and seeing it for what it is, it sounds better. The writing is smarter. They're not holding in the hand of a producer the entire time, like on Enema. And I think that, Futures is just another example of how those records are aging and what they mean to us as, kids that grew up to them.
Yeah.
I just wanted to selfishly say that for myself.
Yeah. I actually watched, I had seen, and I had listened to their podcast before, but I watched your Who's Zoomin' Who with them.
Cool.
And I was already like scheduled. We had kind of the same thing where we talked for like a couple months about it and had it scheduled at once and then had to move it. But I just did it a couple weeks ago. That was the podcast I told you about, that they asked me to like change my settings on my, it's supposed to come out in May or something, I think.
That's rad. Yeah. Steve and Chris are really good dudes. And,
I love talking to them.
I want to do a lot more with those guys. I think that they have a really good idea and a really good thing. And Wingman Steve's presence is just amazing.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about your work with like Billboard, Vice, Comedy Central. I'm super interested in that. I just want to know, I want to hear some deep dishes here. Who have you gotten to work with?
So the last one was Billboard. I was at Billboard for a year. That was like the only staff job of those. The others were like freelance but in the like 9 to 5, Monday through Friday contract kind of thing. So I moved to New York in 2012 to work for Comedy Central, where I was a digital producer, and was there for 2.5 years, and then got laid off. And that was when I made my first music video for Have Mercy, when they first got signed to Hopeless Records. I made their first 2 music videos on Hopeless Records for Spacecrafts and Howl. So I was just doing like freelance video stuff then. And that was 2014, but then I was coming up on getting married in 2015. And so I needed a job. I just felt like it was better to be a more stable person for my wife. Which also I needed in my life. You know, that's one thing she's helped me with to balance that out. But yeah, so what came first? So I got hired at Vice. I actually got hired at WWE first. And I went through 10 interviews to work at WWE. But it was a traveling producer job, and I got the job. But I was going to be traveling like 5 days a week around the country. And I had just gotten married, and that wasn't like the best thing to do. So I was going to take it because I needed a job. But like the Thursday before the Monday I was supposed to start at WWE, Vice called me and interviewed me Thursday and Friday and asked me to start on Monday. So I had to ditch WWE. And so I was a video producer at Vice when they were launching their TV network, Viceland. And I was producing like branded content for them for their commercial breaks, because their whole idea was all of our commercials are going to feel like Vice videos, so people don't fast forward through our commercials, and then brands will want to pay us more because people watch our commercials. And it didn't work. But I was there for like 3 months, from before they launched the network and after they launched the network. And then, you know, my contract was up, and I got hired at Rolling Stone for same thing, freelance contract, kind of open-ended. And I was there for like 2 months. And so I just produced videos for them. I wasn't writing for them. And I did like this video, this like mini doc about 1989 for Rolling Stone. Got to interview Weird Al, who's like one of my biggest heroes of all time. I think he's my only musical hero that I haven't seen live yet.
Yeah, I've never seen him either. He's performed in Lincoln. I just missed it.
Yeah, he's performed here in New York a couple of times. Not that, because he doesn't tour that much. But yeah, I haven't seen him, but I got to meet him. And Rob Sheffield too, who writes for Rolling Stone, but has also put out a lot of good books. Do you know who he is?
I think so.
So he put out like Love is a Mixtape, which was like his first book, and it was pretty big, but he puts out a lot of music memoirs, kind of like I had not read one of his books until after I put my book out. And once I was reading his books, I was like, oh shit, like I write like him. So if someone likes my book, they'll probably like Rob Sheffield too. And then I just, produced some like smaller, like interview videos for Rolling Stone. So I wasn't there that long. And then I went to Billboard. So like I went to Billboard, like straight from Rolling Stone. And that's where I like did, I did a ton of videos for them, man. I was doing like 5 videos at a time when I was there. So like interview videos, branded content videos. I went to Coachella to do a thing with Fanagram for them. Yeah, man, it's all a blur because it was so much work, but the thing is, here's the dish. I was disappointed by all of those jobs because like I started out in music journalism by starting a magazine with my brother just because we love music so much. And we're from South Texas where there weren't like outlets, talking about independent music or punk bands or, emo bands. And we wanted to introduce people to that. And so I got into music journalism because I love music and I don't love anything else more. Like I say in the book, it's like, I love music with the passion that's not even matched by women, even relationships I've been in. And then you get to these places and they're so like stuck in their ways. Like Rolling Stone did not give a shit about video and did not give a shit about like digital. And the same with Billboard. It's like these like legacy, outlets is what they're called. They don't see digital, or at least back then. I mean, I left Billboard in 2016. Or no, I started in 2016. I left in 2017. But they didn't see like digital and video as something that could enhance what they were doing and make them live longer. Yeah. And instead they like the writers and like the print people were so like, this is our world and like, we don't want to let you in it. And now Billboard got sold to the company that owns Rolling Stone, I was there when Billboard bought Spin, and I was like, fuck, man, now they're going to ruin Spin. Like Spin was like one of the last like and now Spin like broke off, thankfully. So I have hope for them. But when they bought Spin, I was like so excited because I thought I was going to be able to like do cool stuff. But then like Billboard kind of just bought Spin to like silence them, and their like market share or whatever. I mean, I'm making that up, but they didn't let Spin be Spin when they bought them. And now Billboard is, just a like an asset to a company, It's a shame.
I got to interview the two filmmakers that did the last Blockbuster documentary. Yeah. And so we got to talking a lot about just how quickly. So there are people that are adoring this last Blockbuster for nostalgia reasons, but there's also people that are like, this is an evil corporation that put out every mom and pop store at the time, right? Well, now they're a dinosaur. They're completely dead, pressed against the wall, and it's cool. And I think that a lot of the same can be said for media as it's continued to kind of die off among the global warming of multimedia.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, when you said Spin, my eyes light up, right? I'm like, oh my God, I love that magazine.
Like, do they still even exist? Like, I mean,
yeah.
I mean, they do. And I was so excited. This is just like in the last year, I think, that they, like before Billboard got bought by Penske, I believe is who owns Rolling Stone. Before Billboard got bought by the company that owns Rolling Stone, Spin broke off from them. And I was so happy about that because I still have faith that they'll remain cool. But now that you bring it up, I haven't seen anything from Spin since then, Well,
a lot of these things for me, especially as somebody, and I admitted this to you when you sent me your book, I have ADD. I'm moving at 2.5 minute punk songs at a time. So
yeah,
for me, it's a lot more of turning around and being like, oh, wait, where did that thing go that I've relied on since I was a kid and got into pop culture?
Yeah.
And the same goes with Blockbuster. The same goes with any print media. And I think that the common thing now is the mom and pop store goes out of business. And then their last week of business, everybody in my town puts a line, 3 blocks long to go eat at this place that they've always adored and always loved. And it's kind of like,
go to like before.
I'm the cynic that's like, you motherfuckers could have gone there once in the last 3 years, but you haven't.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's how I feel right now about music venues. And I mean, I've had some like private Facebook conversations with other music industry people who feel the same way, but can't say it publicly. And like, I don't know. I mean, I probably shouldn't either, but it's like music venues, at least here, like I'm in New York City where I pay $6 for a PBR. What do you do with that $5.60 profit you made off of that PBR? Or I pay $18 for like a double shot of Jack and Coke. Like, what are you doing with all that profit? And
it's buying a new jet ski is what it's doing.
Or like when I've gone on tour with bands, one of the most disgusting things I've fucking learned when I toured with bands is that venues take percentages from bands' merchandise. That is fucking disgusting to me. Like, what are you doing with that money that you just grabbed out of nowhere and took from these bands that are going on tour? And now, because of COVID and we're all in this together, you're going to ask those bands to play for less so you can still sell tickets at the same price and make a profit, or because you have to sell tickets for less money. You know, like and you know what? If these venues close down, someone's going to buy them and open them up. The people who like saved their money and the people who didn't throw away all their money are going to buy a venue and own a venue now, you know? And I'm so cynical about that stuff. And of course they like, and, you know, I still donate money to, you know, to save our stages and stuff because it's important, and it's important to me and it's important to my life. But I also want people to have that conversation. There was this like meme going around a week or two ago about like the rules for when music come back, like tip your bartenders extra. How about you pay your bartenders a living wage and I'll still tip them, but like, and how about don't charge me 600% for a PBR so I can tip them better, you know? Like this is we need a little socialism if it could happen anywhere, it should be the live music industry. But everybody's going to have to take a hit, you know? And I don't know why promoters and, you know, ticket companies think it's not them if they're the ones who can afford a hit, you know? But yeah, man, I don't know. It's all, you said earlier that you're like letting the veil down on the punk rock, fuck the system thing. I can't seem to do that. I cannot.
It depends on the circumstances, you know. And I know you mentioned Nashville in your book, and you talked about like Hard Rock Cafe and shit like that. And that's what really gets under my skin. It's like for a venue like that to hop up next to my local venue that's owned by my friend's wife. And be like, we all need help right now during this difficult time. It's like, dude, some of you need help. Some of you need to just sell one of your 7 fucking jet skis and go out of pocket and pay your family members, the people that work for you, and help them out. They're out of work. Like, it's not that big of a deal. But, you know, the same goes for Bezos and Amazon. That guy could like solve homelessness. Yeah. And it wouldn't hurt.
I have an LLC, like my production company that I'm putting my book out through is an LLC, and that I did all my video work through. I did no video work for it last year. Well, that's not true. I mean, before COVID, I did like January through March, I did. And I made like my like revenue was like 10% of what I would do in a normal year. Who's saving my company? But you know what? I'm not asking someone to, because I didn't save my money to like save my company. I still work a shitty day job where I'm miserable and get to have my book and get to have my company. So like, what am I supposed to do? Like fund bar owners because they won't get a miserable day job? Like I have a miserable day job, man. That's how I get to do the things I love. Like, I don't know what to say about that.
That's perfect. Now let's wrap this up by just focusing on the release of the audiobook with Tyler Posey, and it's out right now as of this episode being on YouTube, so we can talk about it in past tense if you'd like.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I don't want to talk about it in past tense because I don't know how successful or unsuccessful it was. Hopefully,
that's perfect.
Hopefully it'll be successful. But also that takes me, you know, doing all the marketing for it. And I'm currently like editing those videos where I interviewed Tyler about the book. Tyler's great. I mean, it's like in the interviews I did with him, I talk about how like I came across Tyler because I mentioned in the book that I'm half Mexican, and it's not a huge part of the book at all, but I want to make this a TV show, and I really do like believe in like, you know, casting appropriately, and you know, I don't want to just like, you know, get some good looking white dude to, not that I'm saying I'm good looking, but most actors are. It's so like, I just like Googled like hot young Latino actors, and I got like a list, and Tyler Posey was on there, and I was shocked because he doesn't look Mexican to me, and I don't look Mexican to most people. And I know Tyler. I knew of Tyler because when I was at Comedy Central, I was the digital producer for Workaholics, and so I did all their social media and stuff. And he was on an episode of Workaholics, and so I knew of him because of that, and I knew that he was on Teen Wolf, and so I knew he was a well-known actor. But I also knew that he was in a pop punk band because my friend Dana, who owns Big Picture Media, took me to see or invited me out to see his band play when they were here at Knitting Factory. And so I saw his old punk band play. And then I also knew that he DJ'd emo night in LA. So I knew that he was into the music that I mentioned in this book. And then as I did more research on him, I saw that he's talked about having mental health issues, which this book is very much about. So it all just like made sense for it to be him. And Dana, who owns Big Picture Media, which is like the PR, you probably know this, but the PR company who represents The Used, Sum 41, Bayside, Newfound Glory, and has represented like some of the biggest pop punk and emo bands in the last decade. I've known her since she started her company, and my brother and I started our magazine because we met at South by Southwest when we were interviewing her bands. And her company did PR for my charity, Zero Platoon, and did PR for the book. So I reached out to her and I said, hey, can you help me get my book to Tyler? And she did. And she got me his address. I sent him the book, and he texted me one day and was just like, dude, I read your book, and it like, I have too much to say for it to be a text. And like, we set up a call, and he was just really into it. And it was great because it's like, he believes in it, he actually gets it. And that's all I hoped for. It's one thing for somebody to like, I mean, at the least I hoped that he would just be like, yeah, this is good enough. I'll consider doing it, Yeah. But he loved it. And he was in a place, and like, I could say this because he says it in the interview. Where he was in a like weird mental health place when he got the book, and when he got like the letter I wrote him, and it just hit him, like it hit him hard, because it's crazy. He's 10 years younger than me, which is great because he's like the age I was when I wrote this book, or when I started writing this book. Yeah. And we have so much in common. It's ridiculous. Like, just the way we grew up, and I mean, just a lot of things that have happened in our lives other than, being a famous actor for me. But we have a lot in common, and we're very similar people. And he says that too in the interview. But so yeah, he was stoked to get on board, and he did. He recorded the audiobook in a way that's like so good. It's like watching a TV show. And absolutely. He's an amazing actor, and I'm stoked, and I need to get off my ass and write a pilot script so we can make it. But that's my ADD and, I don't know, inferiority complex and stuff that keeps me from doing that.
Well, I'm stoked. I'm excited to listen to the rest of it. Again, it comes out at the April 27th.
Yeah. So, well, I got to say one more. Let me say one more thing about it, or one thing with a lot of little things in it. So as I mentioned earlier, because, every chapter has a song that goes with it. Those songs are actually in the audiobook, and I went through a lot of trouble and work to get clearance for those songs. So mainly so I wouldn't get sued, but also because I wanted those songs in there. And so Chris Carrabba gave me a version of Hands Down that he owns, so I wouldn't have to go to Universal Music, because Universal Music would not let me use any of the songs for free. I know that sounds shitty to ask for, but I'm donating 50% of the profits of the book, of the royalties, which is the only money I get from it, to charities, to mental health charities and artist relief charities. So I figured, bands would want to be on board to like help with this, this stuff. And they did. And most of, like, the first person I went to was AJ Perdomo from The Dangerous Summer, who I've met a bunch of times. And he was one of the first people I gave the book to. And he texted me about how much he loved it. And so he reached out to Hopeless Records to ask them to let me use his music for free. And they're the ones who set the contract of, it's called an MFN agreement. And it means that, like, I don't have to pay for that music as long as no one else gets paid. But if anybody else gets paid for music, then I have to talk to them about paying for the music. And that was great to me, because that's what, like, kicked it all off. Like, they gave me the Wonder Years song too, as long as the Wonder Years approved the use of it, and they did, which led to BMG, and BMG handled publishing for the Alkaline Trio song. The Alkaline Trio song came out on one of their Asian Man Records albums. And I just messaged Mike Park on Facebook, and we're friends on Facebook, which is awesome to me, because, like, I grew up on, like, my first, like, ska bands were like Skank and Pickle and Bruce Lee Band. And I just sent him a message, and I was like, hey, I'm doing this. Can I use this song? And he said yes. Alkaline Trio's manager said yes. Like I said, Chris Carrabba gave me that song. The Smoking Popes gave me a version of Megan that they recorded and that they own, so I wouldn't have to go to Universal Music to get it. And then I wanted to get every song in the book first before I went to Jimmy Eat World, because I knew they would be the most difficult, because them and Death Cab for Cutie are the biggest bands in the book. And once I got all the songs cleared, I went to them and had to go to Universal, and Universal said they would not let me use the songs. And then thankfully, Jimmy Eat World coincidentally did the Phoenix sessions. This is what this shirt is from, where they did a live stream of Futures from beginning to end and recorded new versions of it that they own. And I reached out to their manager, and they're letting me use those versions that, don't exist anywhere legally right now. So if you get the audiobook, you can hear 23 from the Phoenix sessions, and Kill from the Phoenix sessions. And you can't hear them anywhere else in an authorized sense. So yeah, man, I'm super excited about it. Like, I worked so hard and almost gave up so many times, and I'm still super stressed about it, and I'm still, like, very burnt out, but, so please get the audiobook. Just, I don't even care about the money. I get like $2 a copy, maybe, because, I'm cutting Tyler in, and I'm donating 50% to charities. But yeah, I just want people to hear it, man. I'm so proud of it. It's the biggest thing I've ever done in my life, the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Tyler's so good in it. All these bands helped me out so much. And so I want that to, like, pay off for all of them too. But yeah, I'm super proud of it, and I hope people will check it out.
Awesome. And yeah, I will recommend it. It's fantastic what I've heard so far. I'm excited to get back into it. And I wanted to thank you, Mike, for joining me today.
Thanks, man.
I hope you have a great rest of your night.
Yeah, you too.
Cool. And scene.
All right.